The woman smirked as though she was humoring just another traveler with a thick southern drawl. She had no idea who she was really speaking to. Jacqueline Mercer adjusted the worn leather strap of her carry-on as she stepped aboard Flight 842 from Birmingham to Minneapolis. The plane smelled faintly of stale air and citrus cleaner, and the hum of overhead vents underscored the faint murmurs of passengers settling in. Jacqueline didn't stand out much to most. Just another middle-aged black woman traveling solo, dressed in wide-leg trousers, a crisp navy blouse, and low heels. No flashy jewelry, no name-brand logos screaming for attention. But if you watched her closely, her movements were deliberate, precise, like someone who knew their way around an aircraft, not just from the seat, but from the cockpit. She found her seat 3C, aisle, toward the front of the business cabin, slid her carry-on under the seat with practiced ease, and exhaled long and slow as she settled in. Her mind wasn't on snacks or seat belts or emergency exits. Tomorrow morning, she had a make-or-break meeting with a logistics partner from Germany, one that had flown in specifically to renegotiate a $1.2 billion global contract. Sleep, not social chatter, was what she needed. Quiet, not conflict. As the plane filled, a perky blonde flight attendant moved down the aisle, stopping to check bags and distribute chipper greetings like confetti. Her name tag read Haley Quinn. When she reached Jacqueline's row, she paused. "Well, hello there," Haley said, smiling. "Oh, you're in the right seat." Jacqueline raised one eyebrow. The comment wasn't loud, but it had that strange Tonia flick of doubt disguised as politeness. She'd heard it before. The unspoken disbelief that someone like her could possibly be seated in business class. Jacqueline didn't respond. She'd learned, long ago, that not every jab warranted a duel. The plane took off smoothly. 10 minutes after leveling off, Haley returned with a cart and a strained smile. Jacqueline leaned slightly forward, tone even. "May I have some sparkling water, please?" Her voice carried that soft Georgia melody, smooth and gracious. Haley blinked. "Sparkling water?" she repeated slowly, drawing the words out like they were foreign. "You mean like club soda?" Jacqueline gave a polite nod. "Yes, ma'am." Haley chuckled under her breath, that unmistakable little laugh, the kind you toss at someone you think is quaint, amusing. She poured the drink, didn't make eye contact, and moved on without another word. Quick, dismissive, but edged. Jacqueline sipped her water calmly. She wasn't new to this. She'd seen that exact expression on countless faces over the years. Heard the mocking echo of her drawl played back to her in elevators, on calls, at conferences. It wasn't about her words, it was her voice, the vowels wrapped in a southern cadence that people mistook for weakness, for ignorance. But Jacqueline Mercer hadn't built an empire by chasing every slight. 2 rows behind her, a boy whispered to his mother, "Why was that lady laughing at the woman with the short hair?" "She wasn't laughing at her, honey," the mother said gently. "People just talk different sometimes." The child frowned. She was mean. Jacqueline heard every word. She didn't turn, didn't flinch, just calmly tucked the almonds Haley later handed her into her bag and went back to her tablet, her fingers gliding effortlessly over complex spreadsheets from her Frankfurt team. Half an hour passed. Haley moved through the cabin again, her cheer thinning. When she collected trash, her tone shifted from sugary to clipped. "Trash?" she asked sharply, holding the bag at Jacqueline without looking at her. Jacqueline held out her cup without a word. As Haley walked away, she muttered, barely above a whisper, but just audible enough, "Gotta love that southern syrup." Jacqueline's eyes lifted, sharp and still. She didn't imagine it. Across the aisle, a woman in her 20s, white, with a blazer too big in the shoulders and a nose ring, looked up. This time, she didn't glance away. Their eyes met. No words, just a moment, heavy with unspoken truth. 20 minutes later, Haley returned, handing out customs forms for international connections. When she reached Jacqueline, she paused, then pulled the forms back. "Don't think you'll be needing this," she said, with a smirk. That did it. Jacqueline closed her tablet. Most passengers were too absorbed in their screens to notice the accumulation of condescension. But not everyone. A man across the aisle leaned toward her slightly, voice low. "Excuse me," he murmured. "Was she just—" Jacqueline smiled faintly. "Let's just say she's making some assumptions." He nodded. "Well, that's not right." Jacqueline appreciated the acknowledgement, but she didn't need a defense squad. What she needed was rest and a reminder that restraint is sometimes the most powerful form of protest. Haley avoided her for the rest of the flight. Another attendant brunette, soft-spoken, badge-labeled Kendra, stopped by. "Hi there," she said warmly. "Can I bring you anything else? We've got ginger ale, sparkling cider, even coffee if you'd like." "Sparkling cider would be lovely," Jacqueline replied. Kendra returned a minute later. No hesitation, no commentary, just respect. Across the aisle, the young woman leaned in. "I heard her," she said quietly. "You handle that better than I would have." Jacqueline tilted her head. "You from the South?" "Mississippi," the young woman replied. "Moved to Des Moines last year." Jacqueline nodded. "People think it's slow talk, but it's sharp when it needs to be." The woman smiled. "Exactly." Their moment was brief, but something shifted in the cabin. People noticed. Jacqueline's silence wasn't weakness, it was control. She took another sip, opened her planner, and began making notes. Gate changes. Contacts. Final revisions for the Brussels presentation. Cruising at 34,000 feet, Jacqueline closed her eyes not to sleep, but to drift. Her mind pulled her into memory. In her early 30s, Jacqueline wore the same uniform Haley wore now. Navy blazer, wing pin, polished shoes. But her job wasn't drink service, she was the one flying the plane. She remembered walking into cockpits, watching passengers and even captains blink in disbelief when she introduced herself as first officer. Her first airline gig had been with Delta Gulf regional routes like Baton Rouge to Tallahassee, Jackson to Mobile. Small cities, big challenges. She flew through tropical storms, rerouted around hurricanes, and landed on icy Montana runways with barely any ground support. Her first captain, a man named Von Kilpatrick, said it straight. "You're going to have to be twice as good, Mercer, just to get half the respect." He wasn't wrong. Jacqueline didn't argue. She flew, learned every bolt and backup protocol, memorized engine failure scenarios. During turbulence, when other co-pilots lost composure, she remained calm. During an in-air mechanical failure over Kansas City, she handled communications, stabilized the descent, and talked a panicking attendant back to calm. When she made captain, there was no fanfare, no champagne. She bought herself a new pair of gold earrings and drove alone to a seafood shack in Gulfport. Her grilled catfish tasted like victory. Years later, a recruiter approached her about moving into logistics leadership. She resisted. Flying was in her bones. But she saw the ceiling. She'd flown across the globe, but the industry would only let her rise so far. So she pivoted out of cockpits into boardrooms. Now, she signed billion-dollar contracts, ran fleets, designed cargo routing systems. She missed the sky as silence, the rhythm but not the fatigue. Back in seat 3C, no one called her captain. Just another black woman with a carry-on and a southern drawl. But Jacqueline Mercer had flown more miles than half the flight crew on board. The wheels kissed the runway at Minneapolis. Jacqueline stayed still, hands folded. Old habit-watching landings, judging technique, timing deceleration. "Welcome to Minneapolis," came the pilot's voice. "Local time is 3:17 p.m. Passengers stirred. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Haley reappeared, moving briskly through the aisle, smile now brittle. She paused at Jacqueline's row, knelt slightly. "Hi. If anything I said earlier came off as, offensive, I didn't mean it that way. I was just joking. Some people are sensitive." Jacqueline looked at her squarely. "I don't recall laughing with you." Haley's face froze. Anyway, have a good day." "You too." Nearby passengers caught the exchange. Some looked surprised. Others nodded with quiet respect. Jacqueline stepped into the aisle and noticed Kendra near the galley. "Thank you," Kendra said softly. Jacqueline gave a true nod. "You did just fine, too." As she deplaned, she saw Haley whispering to the captain. The older man glanced at Jacqueline, his expression unreadable. Then, as she reached the jet bridge, he spoke firmly. Next time, keep the jokes to yourself. Outside the gate, Jacqueline checked her watch. 3:24 p.m. 2 hours until the Brussels meeting. She walked to the Sky Club. At the lounge reception desk. "Welcome back, Miss Mercer," the attendant said brightly. Inside, 2 pilots near the bar stood up. "Jacqueline," one said, grinning. "Didn't know you were flying today." "I try to keep a low profile," she smiled. "Please. You taught half of us how to land in a crosswind." They laughed. Moments later, a regional executive approached, greeted her warmly. They talked like old colleagues, like insiders. And across the lounge, Haley entered. Her once loud voice dropped instantly. She froze when she saw Jacqueline seated among pilots, executives, decision-makers. Haley drifted to the coffee bar, stirring sugar into an empty cup. Face flushed, hands stiff. Kendra approached. "Didn't realize Ms. Mercer was on our flight." "Who?" Haley mumbled. Kendra blinked. "Jacqueline Mercer. You don't know who she is?" Haley shrugged weakly. "Just some passenger, I guess. She's on the board of Northwind Aviation. Flew for 20 years. Helped build our international cargo systems." Haley swallowed hard. "Didn't realize. You should have. Jacqueline met Helish Gage on Shano Melis." "Just awareness." The HR director handed Jacqueline a folder. "Fleet performance," she said. Haley stood awkwardly near the coffee station, debating whether to approach. Eventually, she walked over. "Miss Mercer?" "Yes. I didn't know who you were earlier." Jacqueline raised a calm hand. "Stop right there." Haley froze. "Don't apologize because you found out I'm somebody," Jacqueline said, voice level. "Apologize because you were disrespectful to someone you thought was nobody." Haley went silent. "You don't need to know someone's resume to treat them with decency. I didn't need your regret. I needed your respect when you thought I didn't matter." Haley whispered, "You're right. Now you know." Haley turned, walked away. No applause followed. Just a thick silence. Later, Kendra approached. "Thank you," she said. "You handled yourself well, too," Jacqueline replied. "When you lead someday, make sure the ones who feel invisible are seen." "Absolutely." Another voice came. "You still know how to level a room." Jacqueline turned. Morgan Thayer, former COO. They chatted, caught up, and across the lounge, Haley sat alone. No phone, no scrolling, just silence. No one needed to tell her the lesson. She'd already learned it. Jacqueline stood, gathered her folder, and headed toward her meeting. Several nodded as she passed. A mechanic whispered, "I saw you." "Thank you." At the window, Jacqueline paused watching the ground crew work in harmony. She missed that. The clarity. A young woman approached. "Are you Jacqueline Mercer?" "Depends who's asking. My uncle's in corporate. I just started as a logistics assistant." "You already took your first step." You spoke up. The woman blinked. "People like me, we don't always see a path." Jacqueline smiled. "When there isn't one, you build it." She walked on. At the meeting room, 2 directors stood as she entered. "Good to see you, Ms. Mercer." She took her seat. "Let's get to work." And somewhere across the airport, Haley Quinn zipped up her uniform again, preparing for her next flight. But something had shifted, because real power doesn't announce itself. It moves, quiet, unshaken, undeniable.